Listen to the grammar of it. Rhaenyra Targaryen sends her husband to Tumbleton with an order that has no ambiguity in it at all. Take the town. Kill every Hightower to the last man. And then she adds the condition, the one line the whole hour is built around, the line the episode keeps circling back to like a tongue going to a broken tooth. Do not make a monster of me. Not, do not let me become a monster. Not, keep me from doing something monstrous. Do not make a monster of me, as though monstrousness were a thing other people do to you. As though it arrived from outside, carried in on someone else's hands. And the trick was simply to stand far enough back that it never reached you. She is asking Daemon to commit an atrocity and to somehow return without it. She wants Tumbleton burned, and she wants her own reflection unchanged. She wants the thing and not the being of the thing. It is one of the most honest lines the show has ever written, and it is honest by accident, honest about her in a way she doesn't intend, because that sentence is not a moral instruction. It is a laundering request. It is a queen asking her husband to hold the knife so that her hands are technically empty when the historians arrive. And here is what makes this episode remarkable rather than merely brutal. It takes her at her word, and then it builds an entire hour out of people trying to do exactly that. Everyone in this episode is trying to get something terrible accomplished without being the person who accomplished it. Rhaenyra hands the septon to Aelin. She hands Tumbleton to Daemon. She hands Helaena to the guards. Ormond Hightower hands his front line to children. Gwaine hands the possibility of peace to Daemon and lets him say no so that no Hightower has to. Daemon, the most violent man in Westeros, spends the first half of the battle sitting on a horse, waiting for someone else to give him a signal. Count them. In an hour with 5 named deaths and a city on fire, almost nobody does their own killing. And then at the end, a woman nobody in the story has listened to for 3 seasons walks across a room by herself, opens a window by herself, and does the only thing in the entire episode that isn't delegated to anyone. That's the episode. That's the whole thing. Everything else is decoration on that structure. It starts with a maester shaking a sleeping queen. Orwyle wakes Rhaenyra in the dark with the news that Aegon is alive and Sunfyre is alive, and the first thing out of her mouth, not a strategy, not a curse, not a question, is he is risen. 3 words. Anyone raised anywhere near a church knows exactly what those words are for and exactly who they are usually about. And Rhaenyra doesn't reach for them because she's making a clever joke about her brother. She reaches for them because in the half second between sleep and speech, her mind has already filed Aegon under a category that isn't political at all. He's not a rival claimant anymore. He's a thing that came back. He got burned nearly to death, he fell out of the sky, everyone agreed he was gone, and he is up again. And so is the dragon, and there is now something loose in the world that does not obey the rules about what stays dead. Daemon calms her in High Valyrian. It's a beautiful little beat and a slightly sinister one, because it's the sound of a man soothing a frightened woman in a language the servants can't follow. It's intimacy and it's information control at the same time. That's their marriage in about 4 seconds. But the reason the show opens here, rather than at Tumbleton, where the plot actually is that it wants to establish the register the whole hour will run in. Religion, resurrection, anointing, prophecy, the great sept, the prince that was promised. The last shot of the episode is a piece of embroidery that functions like an icon. This episode is about the stories people tell to make what they're doing bearable, and it opens with a queen reaching, half asleep and terrified, for scripture. Then it spends the next hour showing you what she does with it. Watch what happens in King's Landing before Rhaenyra ever leaves the Red Keep. The show gives us, in rapid succession, 3 scenes about relationships Rhaenyra ought to be able to hold, and she fails all 3 in a different way. First, Mysaria. Dismissed. Framed as a distraction, that's the word the episode chooses, and it's a devastating one, because Mysaria has spent 2 seasons being the only person in Rhaenyra's orbit who tells her things she doesn't want to hear, without wanting a title for it. She is the closest thing to a friend a queen can have, and the moment Rhaenyra has an army, a prophecy, and a war, the friend becomes a distraction. Not a traitor, not a rival. Something in the way. That's worse. Traitors get executed, distractions get cleared off the desk. Second, Helaena. This is the scene people will be arguing about, and they should be, because it is extraordinarily well-judged and extremely hard to watch. Helaena has stopped eating. Rhaenyra has her held down by guards and force-fed. Notice how easily you could write the defense. She's keeping her alive. Helaena is a hostage of enormous political value. A dead Helaena is worse than a living one for everybody, including Helaena. There is a version of this scene in a lesser show where the score swells and it plays as tragic necessity, a queen doing the hard, loving, unlovely thing. This show refuses to give you that. It shoots it as an assault, because it is one. Whatever the justification, what you are watching is a woman who has already lost a child, already lost her freedom, already lost the ability to make herself understood, being physically overpowered in the last small territory she had left. The inside of her own body, the one place her decision was still hers. Helaena stopped eating because it was the last available act of will. Rhaenyra takes that too. And the reason it's the key scene of the King's Landing Act is that it is the perfect miniature of do not make a monster of me. Rhaenyra does not force feed Helaena. Guards do. Rhaenyra gives an order, guards hold a woman down, and the queen watches something happen that she has caused but not touched. She keeps her hands clean and her hostage alive, and she gets to think of it as mercy. Third, Baela. And Baela is the only person in the episode who says the thing out loud. It was your fault that Lord Corlys was out there to be taken. Then the rest of it, the ingratitude, House Velaryon, everything the Sea Snake and his family have poured into a claim that was never theirs. Baela isn't being disloyal here. She's being accurate, which in a court is much more dangerous. She has watched her grandfather sent into risk on Rhaenyra's account, and she has watched Rhaenyra decline to hold any of it. And Rhaenyra grabs her. Not a slap, not an execution. A grab. The instinctive physical assertion of a person who has run out of argument. It's the same gesture as the guards on Helaena, scaled down and done personally, and it lands harder precisely because it's small. This is a woman who has started reaching for hands-on force in ordinary conversation. In the same hour, she'll tell her husband to keep her clean. Then Corlys comes back, missing a finger, and the episode is generous enough not to underline it. The old man returns diminished, having paid a piece of himself for a war that keeps asking the Velaryons for pieces. He'll be back before the hour's out, and he'll be the one who has to walk into the smoke and drag Daemon out of it. Somebody in this story has to be a functioning adult, and the show keeps handing that job to a man in his 70s with 9 fingers. So she goes to the Great Sept in armor. And the High Septon refuses to anoint her again. Look at what he's actually refusing. He's not refusing to say she has a claim, he's refusing to repeat the ritual. She's already been crowned. She wants it done again, in the biggest religious building in the country, in front of witnesses, with oil, because the first time apparently didn't take. Because Aegon rose from the dead, and the small folk are whispering, and somewhere in her chest, she has stopped being able to feel the crown on her own head. She isn't there for legitimacy. She's there for reassurance. He says no. She has Aelin kill him. Aelin. Not Daemon, not a Kingsguard, not a nameless soldier. Aelin of Hull, the show's most conspicuously decent young man, a sailor who has spent his whole life outside the machinery of this family, and is now being pulled into its center. Rhaenyra doesn't just kill the High Septon. She spends someone's decency to do it. There's a version of this where she draws a blade herself and it's monstrous, but at least it's hers. Instead, she gets the murder and the deniability, and she takes a piece out of Aelin on the way through. And here's the joke the episode makes without ever pointing at it: the murder solves nothing. A queen kills a priest for refusing to anoint her, and at the end of it, she is still not anointed. She has the corpse and not the blessing. You cannot force a man to bless you. That's the entire point of a blessing. It's the force feeding again in a different costume. Physical power applied to a problem that is not physical, and mistaking the compliance for the thing you actually wanted. Then she turns and addresses the small folk. Her father named her heir. She is the prince that was promised. And the camera finds Manderly, and Manderly is not convinced. That shot is the most quietly savage thing in the King's Landing act, because Manderly is exactly the audience this whole performance was built for: a great lord, a northerner, a man whose sword she needs. The blood is barely dry on the floor of the holiest building in the realm, and she is standing in front of it, explaining that the gods have a plan and she's in it. He looks at her the way you look at a man in a market square, explaining his system for the horses. She is losing the room and she thinks she's giving a speech. Then she tells Joffrey, her son, her heir now, a child, about the Conqueror's dream. The show has been building to this handoff for a long time, and it plays it beautifully as a piece of family ritual. The secret passed down, mother to son, the thing that makes the Targaryens more than another warlord family with big animals. In isolation, it's tender. Put it in the hour, though. Put it after the Septon. Because look at the sequence Rhaenyra runs in a single day. She is told her enemy has survived. She is frightened. She goes to be blessed and is refused. She kills the man who refused. She tells a crowd she is the subject of a prophecy. She sends her husband to exterminate a family. And then she sits her child down and tells him that all of this is part of a song that was written before any of them were born. That's not faith. That's a woman assembling a story fast enough to stay ahead of what she's doing. And this is where the episode gets genuinely provocative about the entire franchise, because the prophecy is not a Rhaenyra invention. It's Viserys's. It's Aegon the Conqueror's. It is the load-bearing beam of the whole mythology, the thing that is supposed to make this family's violence mean something, Not just a dynasty, but a dynasty with a job. This episode looks straight at that and asks, what has the prophecy actually done, in practice on screen, to anyone? It made Viserys keep his daughter's claim alive without ever doing the political work to secure it. It got misheard on a deathbed and started a civil war. And now, on today's evidence, it is functioning as a moral anesthetic, the story a woman tells herself between ordering a murder and ordering a massacre. I am the prince that was promised, therefore this is necessary, therefore it is not what it looks like. Meanwhile, at Tumbleton, men are pushing children into a courtyard so that the first breath of dragonfire lands on them instead. Nobody there has been told they're in a song. The episode structure is a knife. It cuts from the queen explaining destiny to her son to Ormond Hightower's men arranging children as shielding. Let's stay with that, because it is the single most morally clarifying image in the hour, and the show gives it very little ceremony. It doesn't do a long, sad-eyed pan across the little faces. It presents it the way an army would experience it, a logistical solution to a dragon problem. Dragons are worse against defended gates than against people. People are what Tumbleton has. Therefore, this is the same act as the force-feeding in the Septon in the biggest possible size. Somebody has decided that the outcome is worth it and that other bodies will absorb the cost. Around this, the episode arranges the Hightowers with real care. Ormond knights his cousin, Daemon the Daring, and it's a lovely, slightly ridiculous ceremony. An old family doing the old things, minting a hero out of a boy who has one battle behind him. It's what nobility is for. It makes ugly work into a story about honor. 20 minutes later, Ormond is beating a drunk half-conscious over a latrine, and that's what nobility actually is. And the episode knows the two scenes are the same scene. And Gwaine rides out. This is the beat the internet will underrate, and it's the moral hinge of the whole hour. He goes to Daemon's camp. He brings Corlys back as a gesture of good faith, hands over a prize unasked for nothing, which is the only genuinely generous act performed by anybody in this episode. And he offers peace, not surrender, not a trick. Divide the realm. Rhaenyra rules, Daemon rules, 2 crowns, no more burning. It's a bad plan. It's an unstable, historically doomed plan that would probably collapse inside a generation. It is also the thing that would have saved Tumbleton. Daemon refuses. That refusal is the last exit. Everything after it. Ormond's death, Roddy's death, the children, the town, the thousands of people whose names the show will never give us, proceeds from a man in a tent deciding that half a realm is worse than a burned one. And notice, he doesn't consult Rhaenyra. He doesn't send a raven. He has an order that says kill every Hightower to the last man, and a Hightower has just ridden up and offered to stop. And Daemon says no on his own authority, because the whole point of the order was that Rhaenyra wouldn't have to be present for any of this. Do not make a monster of me. This is what that costs. It costs the ability to say yes. Then the battle turns on the most humiliating military reality imaginable. 2 of the 4 dragons in the field are unavailable because their riders didn't feel like showing up. Daemon is waiting for a signal. He gets 2 messages instead. Ulf isn't with his dragon, and Vermithor has landed at Tumbleton, meaning Hugh has abandoned his post in King's Landing and simply flown to where the fighting is. Stop and appreciate how funny and how bleak this is. 2 enormous strategic assets, worth more than every knight in the army combined, and the plan collapses because one of them is asleep on a latrine, and the other one had his own idea about where he ought to be. This is the dragon seed argument the show has been quietly building since the moment Rhaenyra decided to solve her dragon shortage by advertising. She needed riders. She found men with the right blood and the wrong lives, and she put them on the most powerful weapons in the world, and this is the part her council never once discussed. She gave them nothing else. No land that means is anything. No say. No reason. Ulf and Hugh were treated as equipment that happened to talk. Equipment doesn't have opinions. Men do. And the episode's cruelest joke is that when the opinions finally arrive, they arrive at the worst possible moment and in the least dignified possible form. Ormond finds Ulf asleep on a latrine and gags at the smell before he starts hitting him. You may have cost us everything. Now get back on that beast. That beast. Not Silverwing, not your dragon. The whole relationship, in 2 words, from a man who is about to die because of how he said them. Daemon loses patience, he mounts Caraxes, he burns the gates, through the children. The show does not blink, and it does not editorialize, and it does not give Daemon a lingering close-up of dawning horror before he does it. He is out of patience, the signal never came, the gates are shut, and there is fire between him and the town, and the fire goes where he sends it. Everything Matt Smith has built across 3 seasons is being cashed in here. This is a character the audience has been half in love with since he walked into a small council meeting and started insulting people. Funny, physical, unbothered, brilliant at the thing he does. The show has let us enjoy him. It has let us enjoy him past the point where we should have, which is exactly how Daemons work in real life. And now it presents the bill, and it's this. Not a duel, not a battlefield. A man burning away through children because he was tired of waiting. You could argue tactics. You could say the gates had to fall, the children were placed there precisely so that they'd be the price, that the Hightowers murdered those children the moment they put them in the courtyard, and Daemon merely completed a decision somebody else made. That argument is real, and I think it's about 80% true, and it is also exactly the argument this episode has been dismantling for the previous 40 minutes. Somebody else decided, so it isn't mine. He held them there, I only lit it. Rhaenyra ordered it, I only flew. Everyone in this hour has a version of that sentence, and every version is a way of not being present at your own life. Before the world ends, the episode gives us the last honest fight in it. Ormond Hightower and Roderick Dustin, face to face, on the ground, in the actual old way. Ormond takes Roddy's arm off. Roddy, arm gone, dying, out of everything, drives his sword up into him, and then Ulf burns them both, and Roddy is laughing. That laugh is the best single moment in the episode, and I'd defend it against anything else in the season. Roddy Dustin came south for this. Not for Rhaenyra, not for the prophecy, not for the succession. For a proper end, in the mud, with a sword and an enemy, and he got it, and then the sky opened and canceled the whole category. He is laughing because he understands the joke before anyone else on the field does. It doesn't matter. The arm doesn't matter, the sword doesn't matter, the courage doesn't matter. The 800 years of knights in honor and single combat don't matter, because a drunk on a flying animal can erase the entire argument in one pass and he isn't even aiming. That is the death of chivalry, played as a punchline by a man who thinks it's funny, and then Ulf keeps going. The blacks, the greens, and then the town. The town. That's the detail that matters. Once he's turned, there's a coherent traitor's logic to burning the army that expected him to serve it. There is no logic at all to burning Tumbleton. The town isn't a side. The town is where people live. What the show is depicting isn't treason. It's a man discovering that nothing can stop him and taking that discovery for a walk. He was beaten over a latrine an hour ago. Somebody called his dragon that beast. He has spent his whole life being spoken to like that by men in good armor, and today he found out that the arrangement was never real. That all of it, the knighthood and the lordship and the Queen's commission, was a story that only worked while he agreed to it. Nobody made Ulf a monster. Ulf found out he already was one, and that no one had ever been in a position to stop him, and the finding out is the fire. Black soldiers enter Kat's house. Hugh finds her body and screams. The episode gives this almost no room, and it's right not to. Because the whole point is proportion. A town is burning, thousands are dying, the war has just changed shape, and the sound that carries is one man in one doorway who has lost the one thing this entire enterprise was supposed to buy him. And it was black soldiers. Rhaenyra's soldiers, the Queen's men in the Queen's war on the Queen's business, in a house that belonged to one of the Queen's dragon riders. This is the shape of the whole dragon seed disaster in one room. Rhaenyra recruited these men out of the small folk, gave them power without belonging, and then ran a war whose machinery grinds up precisely the people they came from. Hugh abandoned his post to be at the battle, and while he was away being useful, the thing he actually loved was destroyed by his own side, casually, as part of the general noise. Two men turn on Rhaenyra in this episode. Ulf turns because nobody ever gave him a reason not to. Hugh turns because she took the reason away. And in both cases, the show is careful to make sure you understand that neither man was ever asked anything. That's what it costs to treat people as equipment. Not a moral penalty, a practical one. Equipment can be aimed. Men choose, and they choose based on what you did to them, and by the time you find out what you did to them, they're already in the air. The aftermath sequence is the best directed stretch of the hour, and it works almost entirely without dialogue. Daemon wakes stunned in the smoke and looks around at Tumbleton. That's the shot. That's the payoff for the entire first act. 40 minutes earlier, in a room in the Red Keep. Do not make a monster of me. He is now standing in the exact thing she forbade. A destroyed town, a slaughtered population, a horror with no military value whatsoever. And it isn't even the version he chose. He was willing to be the monster of the order she gave him. He is now stuck in a much worse, one that arrived by accident, delivered by a man who was drunk in a latrine that morning. Corlys finds him, tells him Ulf betrayed them, the town is lost, and pulls him out. 9 fingers, 70-odd years old, walking into the ash to retrieve a man half his age who cannot presently move. There's a whole essay in the fact that the Velaryons keep paying for this family in fingers and children and ships and keep showing up anyway. Caraxes and Vermithor chase Ulf off between them, and pause on that because it's the most eloquent political statement in the episode. A black dragon and a defected dragon flying together to drive off a third. There are no sides in the sky anymore. There are just three enormous animals and three men with different amounts of nothing left to lose. Gwaine, wounded, crawls across the ground looking for Daemon, the man who rode out that morning to end the war peacefully, now dragging himself through the wreckage of the answer he got, looking for a boy who was knighted at breakfast. Jon Roxton, with Daemon's blood on his sword, a whole duel we didn't see, tossed away in a single frame, finds Ormond's burned body and runs. Even the show's monsters are just leaving now. Daemon is missing, no body. That's a promise, not an oversight, and it's the one thread the episode deliberately leaves loose. And then the last image of the battle, 3 dragons over the retreat, only one with a rider. Everything about the war is in that shot. The dance was always sold as a family quarrel in which dragons were the weapons. This is the moment the sentence flips. The riders are gone or scattered or dead or drunk. The dragons are still up there, and the animals no longer require the argument to keep going. The episode makes 2 odd detours, and both are better than they have any right to be. Harrenhal. Aemond is alive. The poisoning failed. And Alice Rivers explains, flatly, that she was the wife of Harrenhal, a man who has been ash for more than a century. House of the Dragon has been rigorously political for 3 seasons. Magic has stayed in prophecy and dreams where it can be argued with. This is the first time the show has put something on screen that simply cannot be explained by anyone's politics, and the placement is deliberate. It lands in the same hour that a drunk with no plan burns a town for no reason. The message is consistent. The rules you thought this world ran on, succession, legitimacy, chain of command, mortality, are all thinner than they looked, and the show is pulling them out one at a time. Rook's Rest. Aegon flies Sunfire, who is missing half his face, and calls Daemon a little twat. This should be tonally catastrophic. A joke in this episode from this man. And it lands because Aegon has become the show's only honest character, the one man who has stopped pretending that any of it is about destiny. He's ruined. His dragon is ruined. He has been burnt, dropped, betrayed, medicated, and written off, and he's in the air anyway, insulting his brother. There is no prophecy in Aegon. There is no do not make a monster of me. He has no self-image left to protect, which is a horrible way to arrive at integrity, but it's integrity. He was dead, and he's up again, and he's petty about it. He is risen. And then the only unassisted act in the episode. Helaena goes to the window and jumps. The show has done almost nothing to prepare you in the conventional sense, and that's the point. Helena's interior life has been unavailable to everyone in this story from the beginning, including us. She has spent 3 seasons saying true things in a register nobody was willing to decode. Her son was murdered in front of her. Her family used her. Her mother managed her. Her captors kept her as an asset. And this very episode showed us the last thing she owned. The choice not to eat, being taken away by force at the Queen's instruction. The window is what's left. It's the last door in a room where every other door has been closed by somebody who was sure they were helping. I want to be careful here because the easy essay says the show killed a woman to hurt the protagonist. That's not what this is. The episode has spent 40 minutes making an argument about delegation and hands and who holds the knife, and it ends with the one character who has been most comprehensively acted upon doing something entirely herself. In a way, nobody can hold down, order, delegate, or launder. It's not a plot device. It's the structural answer to the rest of the hour. And I don't think the show is inviting you to admire it. It plays it as a catastrophe and a failure. Everyone's failure, and specifically the failure of every person who decided they knew what Helaena needed better than Helaena did. Then Rhaenyra comes back and finds her, and finds the embroidery, herself, on the Iron Throne, surrounded by fire. Here's what makes that final image so vicious, and why I think it's one of the best closing shots the show has produced. Rhaenyra has spent the entire episode chasing exactly this. She wanted to be anointed and confirmed. She wanted the gods to sign off. She wanted a sign that the throne was hers by design and not by argument. She killed a High Septon over it. She stood in front of the small folk and claimed a prophecy over it. She sat her child down and handed him the dream over it. And here it is. Delivered at last. The vision she wanted, made by the only person in the story who genuinely sees things. The woman she force-fed, who then went out the window. You get the throne. It's on fire. Everything around you is on fire. You are sitting in the middle of it. It's the prophecy she asked for, and it is a curse. And the terrible ambiguity, the thing that will keep people arguing until the next season, is that you cannot tell from the image whether the fire is her doing or her destruction, whether she's the arsonist on the chair or the last thing left burning. And that ambiguity is precisely, exactly what she asked Daemon for. She wanted a version of events in which the fire is something that happened around her. She got it. That's what it looks like. It doesn't help. So, the question the episode opened with, answered, nobody made a monster of Rhaenyra. Nobody makes a monster of anybody. What actually happens is much less dramatic and much harder to survive. You give the order and let someone else carry it. You hold the woman down through other people's hands. You buy a murder with a good man's decency. You send your husband to do a thing and attach a condition that means nothing except that you'd like to feel a certain way about yourself afterwards. And every one of those choices is small and defensible and urgent, and about 100 of them make the person you become. The Septon wouldn't bless her. The small folk didn't believe her. Manderley wasn't convinced. Baela told her the truth to her face and got grabbed for it. 2 of her dragon riders turned on her in a single afternoon. Her husband is sitting in the ashes of the atrocity she specifically told him not to commit, which he committed anyway, and which wasn't even his. And the only clear verdict she gets all episode, the only one anybody in Westeros hands her without being coerced, threatened or killed, is a piece of needlework left behind by a girl she wouldn't let starve, showing her exactly where she's going to sit and exactly what it's going to be like when she gets there. She wanted a sign. She should have been more specific.